This is the Cycle 8 Ad Hoc Planning Committee report.
You, Chair Baisden. So the ad hoc committee met twice so far, and the objective of the ad hoc committee was to produce framework options for the future of the participatory budgeting process where we address the following, developing an overall PB process that results in a more impactful projects for the community. And we also discussed and came up with streamlining the proposal development process, because in that process, we were taking about a 6-month time span, which was not giving us a lot of time to work with our community and work with other stakeholders within our community. And we also noticed that we were not using an equity lens in doing so. And then also promoting the engagement of more diverse communities. So, streamlining that proposal development process, we're looking to, promote PB and all the hard work that we're doing for the community. It's great, but we're also noticing that we are not touching the touch points of different diverse communities. We're seeing a lot of the same organizations repeatedly, and we'd like to start reaching out to different organizations, men and women of color, our youth, and reaching out to organizations that benefit the houselessness. Some of our program opportunity areas are the voting outreach, the diversity of participation in all phases, again, making it more inclusive, and dissemination of the information to minority-owned nonprofit organizations. This was another key for us, engaging with disenfranchised neighborhoods. So again, making sure that there's a seat at the table for everyone. No one community is being left out. Being able to streamline the idea collection and proposal development for inclusivity, and idea collection and cycle times. So making sure that the idea collection phase is shortened and the cycle times increase. And education prior to voting, making sure that our residents, they know what they're voting on, and the whole time frame for the program as a whole, maybe looking at a 1-year or a 2-year cycle. Next slide, please. The ad hoc committee was also asked to prioritize the areas for improvement and identify the top 2 to 3 items that we wanted to focus on due to the interconnected nature of the program. So that would be, of course, if, for example, changing the time frame, impacting outreach and education efforts, and also streamlining, the idea collection. So we came up with program education, making sure that people are very well educated on the program itself, our outreach. So reaching out to, again, those marginalized communities, underserved, you name it, and also our cycle themes. And next slide. So our cycle theme options we came up with are, option A was, we thought it would be a great idea to align the participatory budgeting process, our priorities, with that of the city council. And that would be whether it be youth, public safety, economic development, housing, and quality of life. And to touch on that a little bit, aligning ourselves with city council does not mean that we are following behind city council. What we're saying is we're going to take that money, and what we would do is sit with council or come up, probably meet with our councilwoman Ariola, since she's our liaison, and you bring us that information back on what the council's goals are, and we would disseminate the information out to the community and let them know this year we are accepting 10 programs that have to do with youth or public safety, probably 2 different priorities. So that way we are approaching and attacking each issue completely in its entirety and getting more done, as opposed to maybe spending $20,000 here with the police department, 60,000 for our homeless, another 30,000 for the seniors. Well, no, if we are in alignment with council's goals, then what we can do is if council's goals are youth and public safety, well, the entire cycle would be funded on projects that are specific to youth and public safety. Again, another streamlined process that I was really excited about, I'll just say that. Option B was the council theme based on council's priority, of course, decided by us as a body, the whole participatory steering kit committee, of course, with our public input. We highly value, our residents and their input. So we definitely want them to be more involved as well. And next slide, please. The idea collection and proposal development. The idea collection phase, upon idea submission based on the council's priority area. So of course, we would start welcoming ideas based upon the categorized priorities from our council. And under proposal development, this is an opportunity for our organizations to submit ideas in a traditional format, but make proposal templates available to all those who desire to submit a more comprehensive submission. Again, this is where we are reaching across the aisle to help our disenfranchised organizations, our nonprofits who are out there doing the hard work for a lot of our residents who really need the help. We've got organizations who really want to be a part of the PB process, but unfortunately, they don't have the template and they don't have the know-how. And so sometimes we have to be able to help them in order to do that. And so we came up with providing a template, the idea and proposal development semi-confined to where, again, we're shortening those timeframes, vetting from pertinent staff as well as the participatory budgeting committee. So again, with the vetting process, making sure that everyone is involved, we're still being inclusive, and using the PB committee as well. Outreach and education, curate additional educational videos, establish more partnerships, host informational sessions for residents and prospective implementing partners. Again, getting the word out, disseminating the information on a wider scale. I know this time around we used Facebook. We had this awesome video, but maybe if we had a little bit more time due to COVID, things were very restricted. And I think now that we're looking at this more from a bird's eye view, kind of getting more educational videos out there, even with our youth and in our schools. So that way we continue to encourage the involvement of our residents ages 14 and above. And time frame and start. So the two options that were on the table are 1 year to come up with idea collection, proposal development, voting, implementation, and simultaneous with a new cycle. Or we do a 2-year cycle, where we have a 1-year process for idea collection, proposal development, and voting, and then another year for implementation, reporting, and education. So, and then of course, July 1st, after budget is determined, since we are all on a fiscal year. So we've got some major decisions here and a lot of great options on the table. So yeah, definitely looking to, kind of shake things up just a tad.
Round of applause. Wonderful presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to all of the commissioners that volunteered their time to assist us with providing us their feedback and brainstorming and helping us guide through this process. And then just to follow up, Felicia and I came up with this very kind of rough potential timeline of what this process could potentially look like. So in July, we would be looking at education and ramping up for the cycle. And the steering committee would be selecting the potential theme that we would want the following cycle to be. Then from August to mid-September, about a month and a half, we would do idea collection / mini proposal. So we're opening it up essentially, we could still have traditional idea collection as well as those thinkers that are really ambitious and passionate about a specific project. We give them the green light to go ahead and fill out their template completely. Then from mid-September until the end of October, we would have city attorney's office, city manager's office review all of the idea that were submitted. And we would also be issuing them our decisions, so making our determinations on the projects that have been submitted, and that would definitely be with the steering committee. So rather than having the budget delegates vote which projects would be going forward, the projects would all be submitted and they would be looked at by the city attorney's office, city manager's office, and any pertinent departments to ensure that they're legal and that they are with compliance and that they'd be feasible. And then we would also have the steering committee look over them, and the steering committee would be also deciding what would be going forward. So October until December 31st, the proposal development phase plus including study sessions. So rather than having, I think it was 6 months with 16 meetings, not including the ones that they do on their own time. In this option, we would have like study sessions, and we could invite kind of like a tutoring. We could invite the budget delegates to come in, and we could work with them on their proposals via Zoom or just one-on-one meetings. And then January to mid-February, we would have the city attorney's office and city manager's office review the submittals again for final submissions. Then mid-February to March, at a steering committee meeting, we would announce, or prior to that, the steering committee would be ranking all of the projects by this point. So you guys get the stack of, let's say, 40 potential proposals, and you read them on your own time. You'll have a month and a half to look through them and rank them individually, blindly as well, and determine which ones would be going out to the ballot. And that would be at the March steering committee meeting. You vote on the ranking and the projects put on the ballot. And then April, we would be voting, or excuse me, we would prepare for the vote. And then we would have a 2-month-long vote from May to June. Then in July, we execute agreements and educate and ramp up the upcoming cycle, and the steering committee votes on the next cycle theme. So that would be just potentially what this, what a 1 year cycle could look like. And now you could have this, and then we would be implementing simultaneously the winning projects in the next cycle, or we could just take a year to report on the implementation of the projects that won. So that's all I have for potential timeline there. If anybody wants to go back a couple slides or has questions, now is the opportunity to kind of brainstorm and share your thoughts on these options.
Yeah, I have some feedback. Thank you, Tara, for your presentation. It was thorough and great. And Flora, thank you for the potential timeline. The first thing that came to mind when I was really looking through this spread was kind of aligning ourselves with city council's goals, and it's a great idea. And I was also thinking that normally a lot of the times the voice of the citizens is different than the agenda of the city council. And so to have the diversity of the voice of the citizens say, hey, this is the kind of things that we need. They might not be in line, which it's not often that they are, honestly, in line with each other. So I think we're missing part of our mission here, and part of our purpose as being this committee is to be diverse in what the city wants and the voice of the citizens. And I love the idea of having more involved, because I'm sure that there is the regulars every year, the same thing every year, and getting a more education and more diversity out there. You might shake it up a little bit with more people involved and innovative and unique ideas that we have not yet seen. So tapping into those rural areas and some of the untouched areas might assist in kind of maneuvering that And then, I think it's a great idea that, that city council has its agenda and its goals, but not dismiss kind of what is happening within the city and the voice in general. And then the potential timeline, I love the idea of it being on a yearly basis. I've worked a lot with grants, and, with under $1 million grant or at this year, spreading that out for a 2-year period just seems extensive, especially when there's so many people in need. So those are just kind of my feedbacks on what I've seen so far. Thank you both for presenting.
Really great points, Commissioner Martin. I just want to mention that it would be the accumulation of 2 years awards. So if we did a 2-year, we would be looking at 2 fiscal years budgets added up together for one cycle. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And even that, I was working with grants and they were, hundreds of thousands, and it was an ongoing cycle per year. So even if we were to combine them in over a 2-year period, they're still waiting. There's still a long waiting process for this to be implemented. So, I'm thinking about, a homeless encampment, or, whatever it may be, where the funds are regular, or even, the perspective of this commission in general, it's known for a year cycle. So we're really changing that dynamic in the culture of what's been established so far. So those are, that's kind of just what I was thinking.
Anyone else have any observations or questions or comments?
Chair
Or-
Baisden,
Yes, Commissioner Kuyang.
thank you. I see a hand raised from the attendees. Looks like public comment. Like to at least hear the public comment.
That has to be done during the public comment portion.
I thought the public can comment on any agenda item, like especially this one, not just non-agenda item matters.
Felicia, do you have any input on that?
Yeah, it's certainly fine to let
Okay.
him speak if the chair says that's okay. We would just ask the chair to identify a time frame in which the speaker can speak.
Yes, let's let the speaker speak, let's say for 3 minutes.
Okay, David, go ahead. You're unable to unmute yourself.
I think so. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you, steering committee. Thank you, chair. Thank you, staff. Listening with perked ears. There's a lot of good ideas I'm seeing with your proposals for a new time frame and new PB process. I want to point out a few things is that first, before I get cut off on my 3 minutes, because everybody here probably knows I usually take more than that. I don't think it's wise to only align yourselves with the council priorities, because again, PB is supposed to be the will of the people, and the council, as was already mentioned by Tara before, it will not necessarily align with what people want. So I don't think that is necessarily a good idea. I understand the desire, and in fact, you might even say the need to streamline. I think we can streamline in other ways without necessarily going that route. It would also defeat the purpose of PB if the project and the budget delegates were taken out of the process to the degree that's being proposed and leaving it up to attorneys, city staff, and then the steering committee to prioritize and choose the final projects. Having been in PB for what, 7 years, 7 cycles, I understand some of the issues, but I definitely don't think we should go down that route. I have more to say on it, but with the 3 minutes, it'll be difficult. The other thing is rulebook changes might need to happen to make some of these ideas go through. And that is another, that would also put a slow down the whole process right there. Because for example, only having youth programs on because they aligned with a council priority would not actually be allowable according to the current rule book. So that would have to go through a whole nother process. And that's just one more reason not to necessarily go that route. Themes, you know, those could work if there were themes, but the themes I think might have to align more with what we currently have listed with programs, services, etc., and capital infrastructure projects. I don't know. I don't see a timer, so I don't have any clue how much time I have left.
30 seconds.
30 seconds. Well, okay. Thank you all so very much. I will send some more thoughts on the future of the PB rulebook, and I request that you all look at previous notes that I have sent regarding some of the changes that I think are necessary to keep the process going. We need to make certain we keep our public's trust. Thank you all very much.
Okay, thank you, David. It's good to hear from you. And I would like to say at this time also, right quickly, I'm sure that the committee realized that any changes that is made with PB, which we will be making some changes, that we would have to look at the rule books. We would definitely have to look at the rule book because the changes would impact the rule book. And I'm sure they took this under consideration also. Okay, I believe Councilwoman Ariello was next.
Ariola, thank you.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's
I'm
okay.
trying to read and keep everybody in line and not.
All good. I just tell people, drop the A and you got the 2 R's and then you got Ariola.
No problem.
So interesting comment by David, and I've got mixed feelings about the alignment as well. Council will be going, well, my councilship will be going into I'll be going to my second budget goal setting sessions. And we've already met with the consultants that are going to oversee the whole process. My concern is, whereas we had a different management firm last time who actually went out into the community and did outreach. This year, there will be none of that. And I'm very concerned about that. There'll be information online, but there will be no physical outreach. Keep in mind, last year, we were still in the heart of COVID, but there is not going to be any this year. So I don't know what the consulting firm has in plan for us or city management, because we're looking at April, maybe May to finalize, to come up and vote on the budget. And so I think right now, I mean, I don't know how long it takes to get the next cycle going again. And Tara, you had some, I like the streamlining idea, streamlining is always good, which we could streamline some of the spending we do at City Hall, but that's another story. I absolutely believe outreach is key, especially with communities like what I represent in District 6 is the most marginalized community in Vallejo, next to North Vallejo. And to engage those communities and give them some empowerment so that they can actually come to you and say, look, we don't have anything in our neighborhood. What can PB do for us? How can PB empower them? And I think that's that education process that you were talking about, because I'm learning this as I sit on this commission. So, aligning with city council right now until we get a solid city council in the upcoming year, this year would not be the year to do it, in my opinion. We're not very stable right now. That's God's truth. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Stansberry.
I'll go, but I think Commissioner Payne Yang was before me. He's had it been up for a while.
Oh, go ahead, Vice Chair Stansberry.
I just wanted to impress upon you that we certainly took into account, as Chair Bazin mentioned, nothing is set in stone. These are just ideas that we are bringing forth to the committee. So, certainly we're very experienced and savvy enough to know that we would definitely need to check the rule book. And I also want to make mention that I certainly understand both sides. And I understand what you're saying about, council not being very stable right now. I share that same sentiment. However, I do know that to say that council doesn't align with the people is, that could be a yes and a no. And a lot of the reason is, I say that is because we hear residents, saying that they want a lot of, they need a lot of things completed in their areas and in their districts. And sometimes in order to get things done, you might have to do them on a larger scale. So for example, on the ballot last cycle, there were 11 projects, and it was literally, pardon me saying this, but it was a drop in the bucket if you really look at it. And if you look at the impact that it would make, it is minimal, because you're not able to give as much. You're not able to allocate as much. And trust me, I live in a district where we're not rich. Okay, we get up and we have to go to work every day in order to keep the lights on. My saying is that I'm well aware that a lot of us here in District 5 are 2 and 3 paychecks away from living in our cars, right? So I don't need the story on who's who and what's what. I'm living it day to day. I'm a Black woman in America living in Vallejo, so I certainly get it. However, I also agree that sometimes we are at a point in this city where we need to make a dang on impact. A drop in the bucket is not gonna cut it. We should be sick and tired of giving a drop in the bucket every single time a project comes along. And I share that same sentiment with Councilwoman Ariola. No, we're not at a very stable place, but we're getting ready to turn a corner in November, right? And so while I agree with you, this year ain't the year. Certainly let's think of ways where we can be more impactful for these organizations, because us just getting that little drop in the bucket, it's like the person who, if I have to use an analogy, it's the person who is the jack of all trades and master of none, right? Because you're giving $5 to this church, $5 to that church, $20 to this church. Whereas if you focus on all churches in District 1 at this time, all churches in District 1 get 100,000. Next year, all churches in District 2 get, or faith-based organizations get 100,000. Sometimes we might have to break it up that way so that we can make a strong, positive impact and work together for this, for inclusivity's sake and for our city's sake and for our residents' sake. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Yang.
Thank you. I concur with Councilmember Ariela's points. I'm interested in the 2 years cycle, as it gives us some breathing room and time to prepare. Since we went through cycle 7 last year, which was delayed in 2020 and ramped up last year. And we got the results that we're not happy with it because it was a low turnout. This now gives us time to improve upon as we prepare for cycle 8. The neighborhoods that outreach is so important, the neighborhoods we need to outreach to, as well as the data we saw last meeting of those that did not turn out to vote. That's the areas we need to work on, is to get them to vote. I mean, there's a saying, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And then the next thing is, yeah, I would recommend to council member, which I'm thankful she's our liaison here, if we could get the increase for next fiscal year's city budget to increase our budget allocation for participatory budgeting, because in past years it's been way over $500,000, like $1 million or $2 million a year. It's just my recommendation. Of course, we have to have the time to get this all in motion. So if it's a council, I hope it's a council priority this year to increase participatory budgeting's budget allocation versus the $500,000 that we're stuck with these last feels like a while, and that's just unacceptable. It cannot work within. I mean, the budget we're currently allocated for is just not. It's just not workable, and that's that also is a turnoff to those that want to participate in PB. So I hope we could get an increased budget allocation for PB, and also have more time to outreach to those we need to outreach to based on the data we were presented with, the areas we need to work on for a successful cycle 8. That's all I have for now.
Thank you, Commissioner Kuyang. Commissioner Daniels.
Good evening. And as Commissioner Beasley said, yes, we were well aware that there would have to be rule book changes, and we took that into consideration. And we also took into consideration about the council's goals and their goal setting process. However, we also considered that in past years, council has had goal setting processes, and in some cases, none of their goals have been met. And so the idea was that since our money is limited, and whatever monies we have, if part of their goal setting is to improve any youth projects in the city of Vallejo, which would, and we got to consider, we're trying to engage that 14 to say 50 something generation to actually participate in participatory budgeting, and which is the majority of that marginal neighborhoods and society that we somehow in our outreach and in the voting have been passed over or overlooked. So when we were coming up with these ideas, and they're this get quick generation, so if we expanded it out 2 years, because the problem that we've noticed in all of the cycles is that we lose budget delegates with that long time frame. So when you do an idea collection and proposal development, before you even get to the vote, you might start out with 100 and something budget delegates, but by the time proposal development is just about finished and we're ready to vote or whatever, you've down to 25 budget delegates. And we're trying to, if we start out with 110, we want to keep at least 100. So we have to meet people where they are, make sure that the ideas that are the proposals that are being implemented is something that would help all the neighborhoods. And we will have to remain throughout this whole process totally inclusive of the age, the gender, the race, and what we can and can't do with the money that is available. So the idea, the time frame, I would always agree to a 1-year cycle and not a 2-year cycle, because you lose people in a downtime, because everybody's not going to be part of the idea collection. Everybody's not going to be part of proposal development. And by the time it's time to vote, people have lost interest. And that's why that education component is so important. When we're in that idea collection, we can have many PSAs or Zoom meetings to educate people on what PB actually does, why there even was a PB, and what can it do to improve their neighborhood or district. So I just, I prefer the 1-year cycle. And yes, that lining, and we never said that we would align with council's goal setting and leave the public out of it. The statement just said, along with the steering committee and public input. My comments are done.
Thank you, Commissioner Daniels. Commissioner Hunter?
Yes, thank you, Chair Basin. Just listening to all the conversation and including David, the one thing that strikes me, and I think that we want to make sure that we do, is to keep public trust. So the 1-year cycle, I believe that the onus would be on us to do the work, choosing the 1-year cycle and making sure that we are engaging and being impactful and doing the education piece. So the onus would be on us. And I would like to thank my colleagues, those commissioners that served. I know that they were on way beyond an hour trying to come up with the presentation. So I thank them for their time and their thoughtfulness. But I believe the onus is on us, that we must be the boots on the ground doing the work to keep our public, that public trust that is so important. And I know that living in the district with Council Member Ariola, we have boots on the ground work to be done. North Vallejo, we have boots on the ground work to be done. And it's just not in those areas, it's all the way across Vallejo. So again, as the commissioner, I believe that the 1-year cycle will work. I heard one of the commissioners, I was reading something in regards to the homeless population, or we have a new buzzword. 2 years may be too long. So again, I thank you, commissioners, for even having 2 options for us to engage and talk about. And I think everything that's been said is valuable. But again, it's on us as a commission to make it work. And we have a new liaison, so I believe that she'll be serving from the council seat with her bird's eye view, and with all of us working together, because working together works. And thank you, David, for reminding us about keeping the public trust.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hunter. Anyone else or anything additional? Okay, where do we go from here? Ad-Hoc committee, do you want us to, do you want to put a proposal?
Commissioner
on the floor?
Yang has his
Chair
hand.
Basin, Miss
Yeah, still some
Councilwoman
hands
has
up.
her hand up.
Yeah,
Oh, Councilwoman Ariola.
Oh, yeah. You're so cute. I would, just would like, if you could indulge me, Tara or Felicia, who put together the PowerPoint, if I could get a copy of that, keep it fresh in my head, I'd appreciate it. Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Okay. Okay,
So it sounds like there was a question regarding next steps. So Chair, if it's okay, I can go ahead and jump in.
yes, please do.
So this has been a really great conversation. This is exactly why we wanted to convene an ad hoc committee so we can have a small focus group, look at the information, look at the data, look at different options, bring it forward so that we have a starting point. Because if we just open a discussion on what can we do to fix PB, I think that could go for a few days. So what we're gonna do from here is we'll go and look at the rule book. This was part of the plan the entire time. Of course, we're gonna be in alignment with that. Look at it, identify the sections that would need to be changed and updated in order to accommodate this new format of PB. From there, this will be taken to the council for action, getting their input if they're fine with the recommendation of this group or if they want to make their own changes. It seemed like there was some consensus around going with the 1-year cycle. Folks seem to generally agree that we need to streamline the process. There were some differences when it came to the cycle themes and whether they should be aligned with council priorities or not. And so, and those are all things that we can include in the staff report so that council can take that into consideration on whether they want to have a theme per cycle, if they want to leave it open, if they don't want to make any changes, if they want to change the whole thing, if they want to just open it up and you can pick the council priority that your idea is under, pick the one theme. And so there's various options of this. I will say that in looking at other cities are aligning their PB process with priorities and various topic areas. The city of Redwood City, for example, they just launched the People's Budget, which is $1 million towards PB, and it's a really streamlined process. It's less than a year, and they're doing this in order to get a lot of participation and public input that then feeds into their budget cycle. And so personally, I think there is some room to align this more with council's priorities. And I would say that our council members are elected to represent the people. And I think in their goal settings, at least the ones I've been part of, they have done a good job of considering what residents have to say and their input. And so we can take this matter back to the council, have them consider it. If they adopt the rulebook changes, or if they don't, we'll be able to get back to you regarding what next steps look like. I think our goal was to keep the momentum going with PB and to try to have a cycle start in July. Starting with a July timeframe would allow us to already know how much is going to be allocated towards PB. We know we have 500,000 from this current fiscal year. And so depending on the council says, hey, you guys got 500,000, hey, you guys got $1 million, hey, you guys got 200,000, whatever that is, can be added on to the 500,000 we already have, but we won't know that until July 1st after hopefully the council passes their budget, hopefully by June. And so that's kind of that's our goal, but if that needs to change, if we need to do more work around this, then I certainly think we can do that. I think we all recognize that there's a need to make some changes to the program, given kind of the lack of awareness of PB in the community, given the low turnout, given the repeated participation by the same residents, by the same nonprofits, by the same budget delegates. I think we all recognize something has to change, but we'll take this back to council and see what they have to say, but it's been really valuable to get your input on this matter so that we can provide council with your thoughts and opinions as the advisory body for this really important program. So with that said, Flora and I have a lot of work to do to get things ready. Flora, is there anything you wanted to add?
So this item, no, not specifically. No, I think you handled it well.
Okay, thank you, thank you. We look forward to, PB changes and streamlining. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Ad Hoc committee for such in-depth work. They didn't just meet and skim over, what we requested them to do. They really studied it and came up with a lot for us to think about and discuss. And we really appreciate it. Good work. Good work. Thank you. We look forward to hearing what council has their thoughts on the process also.